items on our Board of Adjustment agenda. I'm just trying to get them connected. So.
Okay, we can go through.
Okay, ready? Okay, we'll call the Planning Commission meeting to order and approve the minutes and the agenda for the August 20th, agenda for today, minutes for the August 9th meeting.
Hello? Okay.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the new business A has been postponed, and B, the Stucker Paul Timothy revocable trust request. Permit, let's see. I gotta find the case number.
Is it just this?
Yeah. Case number 2023-8 CUP. And Neva, do you want to give us your narrative?
Yep, sure thing, Madam Chair. So this is a request to amend the existing interim use permit, which was 2022-10 CUP, which would modify the occupancy structure of the Tamarack Land Cooperative and add a new dwelling unit, a tiny house at 5089/5093 North Road in Hoagland. The applicant's property includes 40 acres with approximately over 2,000 feet of river frontage. The parcel is contained entirely within the single-family residential zone district, R1. This property was issued the original interim use permit under section 10.03 of the Cook County zoning ordinance, which allows the consideration of uses other than those listed explicitly as permitted or conditional to be considered by the Planning Commission. And the Flute Reed River is classified as a remote river segment. For general project description, the applicant, Paul Stucker, is proposing an amendment to the initial interim use permit for the Tamarack Land Cooperative, which was issued in 2022. This amendment requests a change in occupancy structure as well as a new dwelling unit. I included a table on the bottom of page 1 of the staff narrative, which would outline that this would be kind of like the fifth type of sleeping area. The third actual structure. There's the barn house, the yurt, and the tea house, and there's some tent sites also. So the fourth structure, I guess. This could allow the maximum occupancy up to 22 people if it was fully occupied at any one time. There's also a table to outline the residential use proposed. Part of my review of this application with the applicant was in talking about the full-time equivalent, kind of the idea that this land cooperative, I know 2 of you were members when this initial interim use permit came through, and 2 of you are new, and, 3 of you were here before, I believe. So the idea of this cooperative structure is you have full-time residents, and then you have some partial-time residents that sign up for a certain kind of share of time of using the property. So the initial request had kind of 3 different structure levels. You have full-time people that have 50 or less nights per year, and people that have 14 or less nights per year. So the applicant is amending that structure to allow more full-time residents and and none of the 14 or less type residents. So that's the primary change to that structure. In the background, I kind of describe further detail about that initial interim use permit request. There was 5 elements of that request. The first one, which is the primary one that we're talking about, is the cooperative member stays. And then there's an artist residency program, vacation rental, public events, and the chicken flop. So we're really focused in this amendment process only in amending this specific part of that original application. I did include the conditions of approval with the 2022 permit. You'll know that the County Board of Commissioners did amend 2 of the conditions that the Planning Commission had recommended, which has the IUP termination upon transfer of ownership or within 2 years, whichever happens first. And then that event shall be allowed at 5 events per year. This initial interim use permit expires in June 14th, 2024, or upon transfer of ownership. For zoning considerations, like I mentioned, it's R1 single family residential zone district, which is favorable towards long-term residential use. For site conditions and considerations, the application has included information from the licensed septic designer, Scott Robinson, explaining the septic design flow calculations. The Cook County Environmental Health Officer, Mitch Everson, has reviewed this and provided a memo for this report indicating that this design plan is sufficient and should serve the proposed use. Impervious surface coverage, wetlands, and slope are not landscape features limiting development options of this proposal. This proposal does not appear to have any significant impact on noise or lighting. Safe access is available from the North Road and parking is available on site. For public noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on August 25th. 17 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners as well as county departments and the DNR hydrologist. No comments were received in land services by any members of the public. There is the memo from Mitch Everson enclosed in your packet. Staff recommendations for consideration. The proposed changes to occupancy and the new dwelling unit appear non-problematic. Staff recommend this amendment be approved for an interim basis to match the original 2022 IUP deadline, whereupon the renewal process can review all of the property usage and septic demands as a whole. If approved, the following conditions could be considered. The property shall be in compliance with Minnesota State Rule 7080 and the Cook County Septic Ordinance, and a land use permit is applied for, a land use permit is applied for and issued for the tiny house placement prior to being placed on site.
Thank you. Mr. Strucker, would you care to add more commentary?
Sure, yeah, I'll keep it brief.
And I'll say Mr. Strucker is on the Planning Commission at the present time, but he's in the audience as an audience person and will not vote on this.
Yeah, so Paul Stucker, 5089, 5093 North Road. Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward, but I just want to say that this proposal is in the spirit of shifting a priority more towards long-term resident use of the property. We've actually since taken away the shortest term member agreement for the cooperative. So it's making space and adding a structure for more long-term residents on the property. And the total use of the property still is well below the kind of density you would see in R1 if we maximally use the 40 acres. And that, yeah, regarding septic, we have an install hopefully this year. We'll talk to Charlie about that. For a vault privy that will basically totally cover our bases, and we've been working with Scott Robinson as a septic designer to square away the barn house and have a design flow A-okayed on that, and working with Mitch for an operating permit. But
Thank
happy
you.
to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone in the audience wish to comment on the project?
I just wanted to say I'm Dr. Stephanie Voss, the resident of the tiny house, and so if you have any questions for me or about me, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? We'll close the public hearing. Board members? Mike? Comments?
Not really, I guess. What are you? Dr. Voss?
Yes,
What? What do you do?
I'm a chiropractor.
Okay.
Yep. So I currently have a traveling business. I take my table into people's homes and see patients in their homes. And yeah, I opened my practice in January. But
Are you up there
my
at North Home or North Road?
nope, I don't live there yet. I stay there frequently, but I don't live there right now. So
So what do you have to do with the project?
I'm a member of the cooperative right now at the 50 nights a year or less. I'm also Paul's partner. So that was some of the ways that I got involved
Okay.
with the cooperative.
Okay. Charlie?
I think it seems pretty straightforward, and as a member of the neighborhood, I don't see
Yeah.
any concern. So.
I agree. Also, as a member of the neighborhood, I've
Right.
driven by
Right,
numerous times.
right. Anyone wish to make a motion
I'll make a motion.
to,
Approve it.
okay, with the,
With the two conditions?
I don't know that we have to, but yes, with the conditions that are in here.
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second, and just to clarify to, as long as Mike's okay, to match the interim basis and the review of the existing permit.
So the entire permit is till 2024.
Yeah.
I forgot to put that in as a written condition, so that would be condition number 3, this interim use permit is valid through that.
As long as that makes sense to the applicant, and that we would just do all the same review at the, that's what I think makes most sense.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll have this at the next county board meeting for final approval. Thanks, guys.
Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn the planning commission.
I'll
Second?
second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Shortest planning commission ever.
No, we had one shorter a month ago. Shorter than this one. All right.
So we got 3 for the Board of
Mileage in the
Adjustment.
truck, I have to get it.
Okay, we'll go right on to the Board of
Yeah, I
Adjustment.
gotta
Call
start
the
my
meeting
truck
to
and get
order.
it To you.
And
Next week, talk to you.
we'll approve the agenda for tonight and the minutes for the August 9th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes and agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First application, Kristen and Brian Beach, Joint Trust, variance request for relief from the zoning ordinance. Reference number 202320V. Eva,
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the applicant that I believe is on our phone line. I'm just going to check with him before I go through my narrative. Brian, are you online?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay?
Yep, thank you very much for your flexibility.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
thanks.
I'm going to go through the staff narrative, and then the chair will direct you to be able to speak after that, so just hold tight.
Okay.
All right, this is a variance request for relief from the Cook County zoning ordinance to allow after-the-fact creation of a substandard lot in the Forest Agriculture Residential FAR2 zone district, where a minimum lot area of 10 acres is required. The applicant's property includes 1.41 acres and is contained entirely within the FAR2 zone district. Newly created lots within this zone district must be 10 acres and 300 feet wide at the structure setback. This property is non-shoreland. The applicants, Brian and Kirsten Beach, are requesting relief from the lot size requirements of the FAR2 zone district to allow the existing 1.4 acre parcel to be recognized as a legal lot of record for the purpose of development. The applicants have plans to develop the parcel meeting the FAR2 zone district setbacks and do not require any structure setback variances. For background, any parcel in existence prior to the adoption of the modern Cook County zoning ordinance on May 1st, 1984 is considered a legal lot of record. County records indicate that this parcel was created and became a lot of record on April 1st, 1986. During that period, the subdivision ordinance permitted the division of a parcel into 2 separate parcels, provided that these parcels adhered to the minimum area and width requirements for the zone district. There was no established formal review procedure for land services staff to grant approval of such requests. The current owners purchased this property on June 2nd, 2023, and were unaware at that time that the parcel was not a legal lot of record. So therefore, they're trying to correct that. Site conditions and considerations. The landscape of this parcel is upland deciduous forest. The property is undeveloped. Besides forest clearing, the applicants have already begun. Wetlands, impervious surface coverage, and slope are not barriers restricting parcel development. The parcel is triangle shaped and surrounded by the Honeymoon Trail on its west property line and federal U.S. Forest Service land on the south and east property lines. Development of this property will be likely visible from the public road. A map showing the surrounding area of the subject property highlighted is included in this packet. The application indicates that a corner stake is on site in the southeast corner of the property. For noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on August 18th. 10 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners as well as county departments, Luzon Township, and the U.S. Forest Service. The U.S. Forest Service's Realty Specialist Kathy Peterson provided written comments. She said, "We have no jurisdiction on private lands, but the Forest Service recommends that the boundary line be surveyed to prevent any encroachments onto the national forest." Staff recommendations for consideration. The only way this parcel could be combined with another parcel to be conforming would be to rejoin it with the original parent parcel, which is across the Honeymoon Trail on the west side of the road, or to combine it with abutting federal lands, which is probably quite unlikely. Given the length of time since this parcel was created, it seems reasonable to allow it to be legitimized as a legal lot of record. If approved, the parcel will still need to meet the FAR2 zone district setback requirements. The applicants have indicated in their application that they have a site plan for developing the property for recreational use that does not require any variances. Although this property will be unlikely to sustain a high level of development such as a year-round residential property with multiple dwellings, it appears that it is as suitable as a standalone recreational parcel. If approved, staff recommend the following condition: the property boundaries are surveyed to appropriately identify structure setbacks and prevent encroachment on federal property. And as I mentioned, Madam Chair, the applicant is on the phone line.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything they wish to include?
Neva, can you pass along any questions? I have a hard time hearing anybody other than you.
Sure, they can hear you okay, which is the good news.
Okay.
The
Okay.
chair just asked if you have anything that you would like to add.
Oh, just a couple of things. One of the things in the packet, and you just read it, mentioned that any structure we would build would most likely be visible from the road. And we're going to try very hard to not make it visible. We don't really want to see the road or have our it'll basically be a small primitive cabin that's not visible. So the steps we'll take for that is we're going to try to leave as much of the vegetation between where we would build the little cabin and the road, other than just clearing a little spot for the driveway. And I'm not sure if any of you have looked at the pictures that were included in the packet or if you visited the property, but we were able to make a little approach, like a little driveway parking slot that's kind of at an angle to the Honeymoon Trail Road. So the way we would position the buildings would be such that when you're driving, I guess it's northeast on Honeymoon Trail, you would not be able to see any of the buildings from that direction very easily, and you would not see anything visible in the small clearing we made to drive off the road. And if you're driving from the northwest down the trail, you wouldn't have a direct line of sight at all into the driveway approach. And then we'll probably add a few native trees, native conifers, probably white spruce, to add to the existing vegetation between the road and where we would build the cabin. And then the biggest thing is going to be that the structure is going to be very small. So it'll probably be 12 by 16 with a fairly low roof height. And the 12-foot dimension would be the dimension, the profile that would be facing the road, and will be used very natural color siding, so it's going to blend in. So those would be the steps we would take as far as that concerned. We're planning to just do a vault toilet, and we won't have any plumbing inside the cabin or electricity. And I've already talked to Mitch Evanson, I think it's Mitch Evanson, about getting help designing a gray water filtration system that would be probably a barrel drip that would be approved by your sanitation people for the county. Other than that, we're planning to just keep it simple. My wife and I live down in Duluth, and we recreate a lot up there, mostly non-motorized. I put that in the packet, so we won't be doing anything that's loud and noisy, and we will definitely keep the property very tidy. And there won't be much visible from the road ever, hopefully. Well, I'd say if you have any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this request?
Can you repeat that for me, Neva?
Yeah, the chair just asked if anybody from the public was present to speak to the request.
Oh.
And no one is speaking up, so we'll close it to the public and have the board discuss it. Let's see.
Well, I did visit the parcel, and what is being proposed here sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, Lynn, thank you. And Paul?
Yeah, I would agree. This seems pretty straightforward to me.
Okay, Charlie?
given the timeframe, I think it's reasonable. As one of the closer private neighbors, I also don't have an issue with it, so.
Okay. The request being made is to change it, not to change the zoning, but to change it to a lot of record.
Yep, just to recognize it as a legal lot of record.
Okay, and with that, then, within he'll meet the setbacks that are required for the current zoning, and that's basically what he has to live with. But it will become a lot of record with approval.
Yep, and the Cook County zoning ordinance does outline in section 9.03 what to do with legal lots of record. So that gives me the ability to work with them and say, if you can do this, you can develop the property without variances. But right now, since it's not a legal lot of record, I can't even work with them on that. So that's what this would allow.
Thank you. Let's go through the questions. Is it consistent with the goals and policies of the land use plan?
Yes.
I
Yes.
believe so.
Yeah.
Is it proposed use of the property allowed in the land use district in which the property is located?
Yes.
Yep.
Is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner and not permitted by the Cook County land zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Yes.
Has the property owner established the practical difficulty involved that is due to circumstances unique to the property?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and the reason being, it was a lot created in 1986 with, you know, it was done before the zoning was, and it sounds like it makes sense because the other half of the lot is on the other side of the road. It was probably two parcel numbers, probably for quite some time. So I believe that that's been established. Anybody disagree? Will approving the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Yep. Has the property owner established that the practical difficulty involves more than economic consideration? Yes. Is there a motion to approve the variance?
I would motion to approve with the one condition as written.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Brian. I'll send you an email tomorrow with a summary.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I'll be in contact about how to get the side and back borders surveyed, so I know exactly where they are. Thank
Okay.
you, everybody.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And we'll move to the second variance request, Mike and Sue Prom. Variance request, reference number 202321V. Neva?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a variance request for relief from the zoning ordinance to add dormers and place an 8x16 addition on the principal structure at a reduced ordinary high water level shoreline setback from Tom Lake, where a minimum of 100 feet is required on a substandard lot of record located at 1161 Tom Lake Road. The applicant's property includes 0.61 acres with approximately 113 feet of Tom Lake shoreline, zoned entirely within the Lake Shore Residential Zone District. Newly created lots within this zone district must be 1 acre in size and 150 feet wide. Tom Lake is classified as a recreational development lake. The applicants, Mike and Susan Prom, are requesting relief from the shoreline setback requirements of Tom Lake to place the 8x16 addition on the back side of the cabin and make modifications to the existing principal structure for the purposes of maintaining the cabin and add a bathroom. The existing cabin does not have a bathroom. Modifications include adding 2 dormers and raising the cabin 18 inches. Development plans also include adding a septic system and conducting other maintenance activities which do not require a permit, such as re-siding, re-roofing the cabin, and replacing ductworks. Drainage plans propose adding gutters to direct stormwater runoff away from the lake. Design plans include earth tone colors for the structure to mitigate visual impacts to the lake. The applicants have indicated they plan to preserve the lakeshore vegetation. I've included the ordinance citation at the bottom of page 3 on the staff narrative. For background, the cabin is dated 1957 and is an existing legal non-conforming structure. Minnesota state statute allows for these structures to be maintained, however, they do not have a specific right for expansion. Expansions of legal non-conforming structures must be reviewed by variance standards. This property is along a stretch of shoreline that is characterized by small lots and non-conforming structures. The cabin is located entirely within the shore impact zone, an area typically protected from development to provide adequate filtration from shoreline runoff and riparian habitat. I included a map on page 4 with the subject property highlighted blue. The development plans have a septic system plan to serve the proposed pressurized plumb structure. There's no issues with wetlands, impervious surface coverage, nor slope. Public noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on August 18th. 18 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners as well as county departments and the DNR hydrologist. For exhibits and attachments, one written comment was provided by William Hooper at 1199 Town Lake Road in support of the request. He cited the planned improvements will keep the spirit of the old cabin, which he liked. The Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District provided a comment letter that supports the variance to use the existing structure with the gutters and protection of the shoreline buffer. The SWCD comments point out that it is preferable to use the existing cabin rather than an alternative of tearing down the cabin and building a larger structure. The DNR area hydrologist provided a written comment opposed to approving the variance request due to the close proximity to the lake. There are recommendations in the DNR comments for consideration if approved to mitigate the impacts. Staff recommendation for consideration. This proposal seems to balance enhancing the cabin's facilities and preserving the area's distinctive character. The inclusion of plans for a septic system, redirecting drainage away from the lake to facilitate better infiltration, and the modest expansion signify a concerted effort to mitigate potential adverse effects while upholding the area's unique character. Staff recommend the Board of Adjustment reviews the test questions to create findings of fact to support their decision of approval or denial. If approved, the following conditions may be attached to this variance request. Number 1, the property shall conform to Minnesota Rule 7080 and the Cook County septic requirements. Number 2, no additional vegetation shall be removed from the shoreline impact zone. Number 3, a gutter or catchment system or vegetation conducive to water retention shall be included on all new or proposed structures to divert precipitation and snowmelt away from Town Lake. And number 4, the cabin shall be earth-toned or neutral in color.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak for Mike? Okay. State your name and your address, please.
Sure. Mike Prom, my home address or the address
Sure,
of the cabin?
your
Sure,
home
2291 County Road 7, Grand Marais, Minnesota. Yep.
And do you have things you would wish to add?
I'm mostly here for, questions, but the biggest thing is when we bought it, we knew that the bathroom or the outhouse had been not up to regulation and tore down, so we knew that we'd have to do something with the bathroom, and so, we're planning on having a shower, a toilet, and there's a kitchen sink into a 5-gallon bucket now that would go into that system, so that's what really motivated it. And then as you start making the plans of, okay, it's sitting in the mud, maybe it should come up so that the air can blow under the cabin, so we don't need to do this. And the dormers are just to get a little cross ventilation because there's a 5-foot loft, kind of, I call it sleeps 2.5 because an adult wouldn't sleep up there. But so that's what we're shooting to do. We're using it for recreational purposes, and we want to be able to, just kind of use the lake. So.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak regarding this variance? Okay, we'll close to the public, and if we have questions, we'll ask them.
Thanks.
So we'll start with you, Paul.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a very reasonable request, and a modest expansion of the building makes sense.
Okay.
And I like that it's away from the lake. I think that reflects a good faith effort.
Okay, and Linda?
This is in my neighborhood, so I took a look at it, and I also believe that it's reasonable and compatible with other properties on this wilderness lake.
Okay. And Charlie?
I agree with everything stated so far.
Okay, I have some questions.
Sure.
The dormers
Yep.
haven't been described,
Yeah.
because we all have different visions of what the dormer might be.
Yeah, they haven't been described because they probably haven't been planned too much yet. But the big thing is they're not going to go greater than the existing roof height, and they're not going to be wider than 4 feet. I'm planning on making them triangular, so that I don't want to have a big impact from the lake. I just want to be able to crack a window
Will it
and
be
get
on
some
the
cross-
lakeside? or
No,
on
they
the-
would be not on the lakeside and not on the farthest away from the lakeside. It'd be on each side. So,
Side.
yeah, in theory, you'd
One
be able to
each.
see them because they're going to be, they're adding to the roof line, but no, it's a gable end on the lakeside.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I had envisioned. And on the pictures, I don't see a deck on the front. Is the variance covering putting a deck on the front of the cabin, lakeside of the cabin?
If you're asking me, there is a deck, but it's within that 18 inches, it's right on the ground. I mean, it's a foot off the ground.
And that would continue?
It would be, we would just, the boards are all rotten, so we would just replace the existing deck that's there.
Which wouldn't need a variance, is that right, Neva?
Right, yeah, and so replacing deck boards, that does not require a variance. And if you
But
look
you
in
said
your-
something about lifting the cabin.
Yeah, there is a deck on it, but I'm lifting the cabin 18, I'm asking to lift the cabin 18 inches. We would do it even if we couldn't lift it. That's just because it's sitting on blocks in the mud. So it just made sense if I'm
I
going to go
just
through the
want to make
effort.
sure we're all on the same
Sure, I
page as to
appreciate
what's,
that, yeah.
what's, and the dormer and the deck. And are you intending a well?
Not at this time, no.
Have you, I think a well has to be 100 feet from your septic. Can you get that?
Yeah, so I'm also
So-
working with Scott Robinson. He must have a monopoly on that end of the world. But, and we've identified a spot that a well, in fact, that was the first
If you
question
want
he has.
one, you
When
can
we've
get one.
identified that, he goes, let's make sure we measure everything out so we have a well, and it's kind of, yep, there's room.
Good, okay, great. Anybody else have questions? I need a motion.
Motion to approve with the conditions as written.
And I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. We'll move on to the Robert Carlson variance request for an after-the-fact relief. Case number 2023-23V. Neva?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a variance request for relief from the Cook County zoning ordinance to allow the existing 15 by 30 deck to remain and allow a proposed 10 by 16 screen building to be placed at a reduced top of bluff setback where a minimum of 30 feet is required and within the bluff impact zone on Lot 3, Block 2 of LaVeaux Ridge plat. The applicant's property includes 2.33 acres with no water frontage. The parcel is contained entirely within the single-family R1 zone district. Newly created lots within the R1 zone must be 2 acres in size and 200 feet wide in structure setback. The property is located within the North Shore Management Zone. The applicant, Robert Carlson, is requesting after-the-fact relief to allow the existing 15 by 30 deck to remain within the bluff impact zone and to eventually place a 10 by 16 screen building on the deck on the property within LaVeaux Ridge plat. The deck is placed on top and cantilevered several feet hanging over the bluff. I included the language for the bluff area standards, which is outlined in the Cook County zoning ordinance. It also kind of outlines that the bluff impact area is the land that's 20 feet from the top of the bluff. I didn't include that definition here, sorry about that. For background, this property is located within the LaVeaux Ridge plat. The plat map indicates a 70-foot drainage and utility easement along the eastern property line of Lot 3, where this ravine is located. The deck was constructed in 2002. Bluff standards were in the Cook County zoning ordinance during this time. For site conditions and considerations, there's no issues with impervious surface coverage nor wetlands. Septic, this use should have no effect on the septic capacity needs. For slope, the slope of the ravine meets the definition of a bluff feature and is the feature requiring variance relief in this request. The map below on page 4 of the staff narrative indicates the approximate location of the bluff outlined in black and gray. The photo on page 6 of this narrative shows the height of the deck hanging over the bluff edge. This is a consideration of this development that increases the risk of erosion and stormwater runoff. For public noticing, the application was legally noticed in the Cook County News Herald on August 18th. 10 letters of notification were sent to adjacent property owners as well as county departments and the DNR hydrologist. For exhibits and attachments, one comment letter was provided by the DNR area hydrologist, Danny Broad. The DNR recommends denial of the existing deck and proposed screen building. The DNR letter cites the increase in erosion and stormwater runoff due to the close proximity and hanging over the top of bluff. Staff recommendation for consideration. One reason for a bluff setback in this location is to allow stormwater to have time to infiltrate into the soil and not run off directly downhill into the creek and Lake Superior. Another reason is for bluff stability. Placing structures within the bluff impact zone puts pressure on the landscape feature and increases the risk of erosion. The location of the deck hanging over the bluff provides essentially no separation from the structure to the top of the bluff. The vertical drop of that concentrated water from the deck onto the ground will likely increase the erosion potential of this development over time. When reviewing variances, it is important to keep in mind that it is the burden of the applicant to demonstrate that a practical difficulty is present, necessitating the need for the variance. I included information from the Cook County zoning ordinance, which reads, "It shall be the burden of the appellant to demonstrate sufficient practical difficulties to sustain the need for the variance. Absent a showing as provided in Minnesota statutes in this ordinance, the Board of Adjustment shall not approve any variance." The reasons provided by the applicant in this application is that the location was chosen to be close to the water feature for aesthetic reasons, and that their contractor had already placed the deck and footings in this location. From staff's perspective, there are no reasons provided that demonstrate a practical difficulty is present. As a reminder, after-the-fact variances are reviewed under the same criteria as proposed variances. The Board of Adjustment cannot make their decision based on factors other than those outlined in Minnesota State Statute and the Cook County zoning ordinance. Staff recommend the Board of Adjustment review the test questions at the front of this packet to review this request relative to the standards. If approved, the following condition may be attached to this variance request. Number one, the landowner provides sufficient documentation confirming that the structure is located outside the platted 70-foot drainage and utility easement.
Thank you. Is there someone here who represents Mr. Carlson?
I am Mr. Carlson.
You are Mr. Carlson, okay. And do you have, can you state your name and address into the microphone?
Certainly.
Maybe switch chairs? Thank you.
Is it okay if I move this?
Sure.
Firstly, thank you for all that you do for Grand Marais. I know all of your jobs here are near and dear and precious to you, and it's important that we manage and maintain people that use and abuse situations. So I feel I'm in a position where I haven't done that, but I do come from the city. I'm up here on a regular basis. I live at 4465 Bayside Road in Orono, Minnesota. I bought the property in the late 90s. I was up here on vacation and determined it was the place I wanted to build a cabin someday, so I worked with a realtor and we found this location, and within a couple of years it was walked by a good architect friend of mine who, I believe you have this document in your deck of information?
We do, yeah.
I don't know how far you want me to go with any kind of a preamble. Okay. So my architect friend was up here, Randall Buffy. He walked the entire property. He looked at topography, and he decided that a good location for this deck was where there's a slight relief of the bluff. As you can see, it's very steep on the far side over here and very, very steep over here. So where it starts to gradually come back, it seemed like a logical place where the property or the 9 piers securing into the bluff would easily secure a deck. And the one notation about the deck as opposed to the 10 by 16 building that would be sitting on top of it, the deck is a pervious structure. As we all know, decks generally have an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch gap in between the boards, so water can easily drain through it, as opposed to accumulate and then run off in a big deluge of water. Now, that's not the case of the roof of a house. We know water will come off of a house, go into the gutter. If there's not a gutter, the water comes straight down and it can erode the land around it. So I want to present this as a two-phased after-the-fact variance relative to the fact that the deck is a permeable structure. I dispute what the hydrologist has indicated in terms of what rainfall or snowfall might do in terms of impacting the bluff itself. With regards to the building that would sit on it, I would like that to be almost in some ways considered a separate variance. In other words, if you find the deck structure, which is important to the property as a place to stand and enjoy the views of this incredible creek running through it, then I would like to propose that that be approved as a variance number 1, and variance number 2 is the actual 10 by 16 building, which could also have gutters attached. It could have a drain from the gutters down to the creek. In other words, my intent would be to not cause erosion, unnecessary erosion beyond what the actual rain itself would do to this bluff. The growth that currently is on the property, all of the ground cover, all of the trees, all of the things growing have none has been removed. This deck was done with sonotube piers, so they were drilled in, no trees were removed. And as you can see in this photograph, I'm not sure, I think it's page 50, there is green ground cover growing as it was and has been and has never been disturbed. So it seems to me that what keeps structures such as bluffs intact is vegetation. The fact that there hasn't been any trees removed, I think, also adds to the stability, and the fact that this is built on 9 footings that start at the top of the bluff and run down towards the creek. It seems as though there's potential that they actually enhance or add to the structural integrity of the bluff. That's personal opinion. That's all it is. But just my understanding of vegetation, trees and tree roots, and things that are secured to a bluff would add to the stability. I understand how a landslide can happen, say in California, where it permeates all the way down and it's an unstable kind of a structure with no vegetation. But it seems in this case there is an entire side on both sides, and as indicated on this isn't a photograph or a satellite, but this is 100% covered with trees and foliage. The only place there isn't would be where the actual creek bed is, which is all rock. So again, I'm not an attorney, and I don't have any position beyond my own common sense to say that we haven't disrupted this site. And a landscape architect, neighbor of mine in the cities, has also reviewed this and has indicated, provided you comply with whatever requests they make, if this is approved, adding vegetation, possibly a swale if there's any place where water would run, that would control that. These are all considerations that she would suggest and that I would be happy to comply with. So I guess that's my opening statement, is I love this area and I love this plan that was produced for me, and this being the first item to be placed on the site seems like a natural fit. And I think the best way to see that is to look at what else exists on this property in terms of the existing logging road, the feature that is this creek, the fact that the other structures will be located far from this bluff, and this is a very light structure, meaning it's not going to have a vehicle on it, it's not going to have a heavy building on it. And if in the actual structure of the deck itself is what gets approval, and the other item on the agenda, the 10 by 16, doesn't, then in my opinion, that would be of value to me. But the fact that it's built and built well, that would be my priority number 1.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak regarding the Carlson request? We'll close it to the public and leave it to the board here. Anyone have questions?
I'm trying to find in here exactly how far it encroaches on the bluff.
It's
Well,
in the
hanging
bluff.
over.
It's hanging over.
Well,
It's like
yeah.
a negative,
And the setback is 30 feet from the top of the bluff.
right.
Okay.
And this is not a designated trout stream or?
Correct. It
It-
only
it's
meets the
a-
bluff because of it is within the North Shore Management Zone. I should have included more of that in my narrative. So it's classified shoreline because it's within the North Shore Management Zone. The ravine itself is not a public water.
Right.
And how do the wooden steps come into play? Is
Where
that
do they
something
go?
that goes down the bluff? I visited, I walked out here and took a look, and they go farther, lower into the bluff. Did somebody was there a permit needed for those?
We do
Because
allow stairs and landings in section 7, the shoreline ordinance area, well, the shoreline articles of our zoning ordinance. So I think it's 4 feet wide of stairs are allowed within shoreline areas. It's kind of recognized that stairs are better than having people scramble up and down the dirt hillsides, and they actually prevent erosion for that type of traveling. I guess I will just clarify, I just wanted to clarify the idea of pervious versus impervious surface, just so that we're all on the same page, is that the zoning ordinance does recognize decks as impervious surfaces, because anything that's altering the natural hydrology of the raindrop, essentially. That a deck is still kind of concentrating those raindrops into, specific lines. Gravel driveways are also considered impervious surface coverage in our zoning ordinance. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about
Sure.
the terminology, but
Sure.
in the spirit of the applicant's statement, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with the use of the tents on there, those are also throwing the water in an unnatural distribution.
Right.
Yeah, there's landings that run down the east side of it, and then they take a left into the front, and then there'll be eventual steps down to the creek, once again, to stabilize the notion of walking down towards the creek.
So to correct the situation, a person would have to move that deck back 20 feet?
It would be more than that. It would be like 40 feet probably when it's all said and done, because it is hanging about 10 feet over that top of bluff right now, and then to push back another 30 feet to meet the top of bluff setback.
This-
I don't have a specific number for that, though, I didn't.
Okay.
The rendering in the middle here shows a profile view, how it's situated on that bluff. So at the very top, which indeed is where the bluff starts to drop, would be where the first set of anchored tubes are, the 3 tubes. Then there'd be another 3 after that as it runs down the hill, but it starts on level ground. So when you walk onto the deck, it's level ground. And then as it drops away underneath the deck, and that's where the piers come up and support the deck.
And I'm looking at this from the standpoint of, if at the time somebody was coming to us asking to do this, would I approve this? Or would I be okay with this? And my answer is no.
Yeah. I think we're required to recognize the practical difficulty, and I'm not seeing, other than the convenience of being to look over the cliff, I can't find a practical difficulty. It was built in the wrong place. That's why I'm asking, and I always ask, can it be done correctly on the property? And I think it can. It can be taken and placed where it is legal and doesn't require a variance. So these lots are big enough. They're about 2 acres, aren't they?
Typically, we see with these newly platted lot, well, I would consider a relatively newer plat, with conforming lots, there should be locations that are buildable on these lots. That's kind of the whole purpose of going through the platting process. This lot did recognize this ravine, like I mentioned, that 70-foot drainage utility easement is on the plat map. And I included a little excerpt of that on page 48 of 58 in the staff narrative. You can kind of see that 70-foot drainage and utility easement following along that northeast property line.
That doesn't look like a current or accurate satellite view, being as that there's no trees. Is this an old satellite view?
No, they take those photos when it's leaf off. So anytime they do these aerial photos.
I see.
They try to hit it either in like super early spring
Okay.
or late fall.
So that's how it appears currently then when the trees have no
Yeah, I can
leaves?
look up the actual date of that photo. Sorry, Madam Chair.
I see it in the lower left corner. It was recent. It was, yeah, 9/7/23.
That's when I printed the map. I'll find it.
Is the creek within the 70-foot drainage?
I believe so. I think that's what that drainage was trying to recognize, was the creek.
I'm generally inclined to also not see a practical difficulty. I'm wondering, just in terms of spacing and thinking about the property, looking at your site plan here, the main cabin is between the old logging road. The proposed main cabin that you'd build is between the deck and the old logging road. That's the main cabin
Well,
structure.
okay, so when this was done back around 2000, again, without an understanding of the bluff consideration, the deck was sited where the deck is. The cabin certainly has not been built yet.
Right.
That's part of the dream, and part of the goal is to get that built at some point. In fact, that's the reason that they were out doing soil tests and discovered the deck, was that they were out doing those soil tests to locate septic, locate possible cabin, but with the understanding that there's a 30-foot setback going forward. I'm not sure exactly where the cabin would get sited now, knowing that consideration. So the logging road is more or less that, and the ravine is what drove the location of these buildings as they currently sit, if this is the plan that you're looking at.
Yep.
Yeah.
The old logging road, has that been abandoned?
I have no idea. I just used it because it was there and there were
So
no
you're
trees on
using it as a driveway?
Yeah, I use it as a driveway and had Mike Rose bring in Class 5 to make it a little bit more
Okay.
drivable and less muddy.
Right,
So then on the other side, again, it's all woods. I haven't even.
but no one else is
No.
using that as a road?
No, nobody's using it as a road.
Okay.
You can't even get all the way through because it's kind of closed off on this far. I guess in this view, it looks like an east. I think east is over here. So the lake is turned, that angle. So the consideration going forward for other structures would be, based on obviously what is laid out in the ordinance regarding the setbacks and so forth. So this is obviously would need to be an exception of the rule, but that would certainly change the plan going forward on other structures as to where they would go. But they all relate to each other. They're all trying to make use of the fact that the logging road does split it, and I did utilize it as a driveway. And I don't know how much of the land. I know I have 2 acres back in the Twin Cities, and I just had to have a septic system done because the prior one was failing from 50 years of use, and there was literally only one location on the 2 acres. It had to be in my front yard.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was it on 2 acres, so I do know that septic systems,
I think there were 2 sites identified when these lots were created. And they should,
that I didn't know.
yeah, I think that's the case. Explain this drawing, the top drawing, a little bit. The one we're looking at, the top drawing.
Here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where is Highway 61?
Okay, so if you're looking at it this way, Highway 61 is here, the lake is here.
Okay, and the 70-foot drainage easement is across the top of the map?
That's all new to me. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know where that is. And it said east. I took a compass today, and to me, the east was over here, which was, but I'm not able to verify what even that reference is. This is the first time I'd actually seen that.
Okay,
Was
well,
reading
there
through
is
this
a
couple
little
days ago.
circle down here, and
If I may, Madam Chair, that photo that I should have made it bigger. I didn't realize it was going to be such a talking point, but that is a screenshot from the recorded plat map for this.
Okay.
So in that, you actually see Highway 61
Mhm.
outlines, and then there's an outlot, and then it's this lot 3.
that's back here. I'm looking at this one, the drawing with the structures on
Sure,
it,
the architectural drawing.
Yeah.
and I'm trying to figure out the top structure, is that where the deck is, overlooking the bluff?
Yes, yes.
What's the next structure down?
That's the proposed cabin,
Okay,
and then on the other side of the driveway would be the garage.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Oh, I see the 70 feet. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Just given one of your original comments, Judy, given that there's spots on the property that this can be done without a variance, I don't see that we can meet our findings of fact. I think
Yeah.
that would be my opinion.
Well, and as far as building a greenhouse on it, I'm not even gonna consider that. That would be further creating the problem. For this, I think we have to go through the questions. Anybody else have comments or questions? And I'm going to go back to the questions, I forgot them for the prom, so we'll go back and go through the questions for the prom as well. So, for this variance, is the variance consistent with the goals and policies of the land use plan?
No.
No.
And the reason is?
That we can meet all our setbacks.
Setbacks can be met.
On the property.
And is the proposed property in the land use district in which the property is located? That's fine.
Mhm.
Is the property owner proposing use that's reasonable manner and not permitted by the Cook County's ordinance?
No.
Due to the setback requirements.
Yeah, same.
Has the property owners established that the practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the property owner?
No, I don't
No.
think we've established a practical difficulty.
And the reason why?
That we can meet the existing setbacks on the property.
Right, setbacks can be met without a variance. Number 5. Will approving the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Probably would. Except then no one else can do that either, because they can all meet the setbacks. Has the property owner established the practical difficulty involves more than economic consideration?
No.
No.
Okay, I need a motion regarding this variance.
I would motion to deny this variance request.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries to deny the variance. And I do want to go back and revisit, I forgot to do the prom checklist.
So I think we should do tomorrow and get timing and next steps.
Okay.
Ken, is it okay to do this, to go back to the proms when he's not here?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that. I think it would be problematic if you were changing. I think
We're
putting
just,
together the findings of fact supporting the motion. That was
correct, and the reasoning behind it. Okay, so we're on the prom variance. And the variance consistent with the goals and policies of the Cook County Land Use Guide and the harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Cook County zoning ordinance.
Yes.
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 I'm going to ask why. It's reasonable?
Yeah, it's an existing structure. I think it's reasonable and it is
Compatible with.
compatible
And
and,
1957 was when it was
correct.
built.
Yeah.
Number 2, is the proposed use of the property allowed in the land use district in which the property is located? Yes.
Yes.
Is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, putting in a septic is very reasonable. Has the property owner established that the practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner?
Yes.
Yes.
And why?
It was all pre-existing before they purchased it.
When you guys go through this question, you're thinking about reasonable, just stating that a structure is pre-existing, it might be helpful to kind of think through, because we see a lot of different types of pre-existing structures and lots of different requests to add on to those existing structures. So I would just nudge you a little bit to kind of try to suss out what's making these different things distinctive from each other.
Mm.
Like, kind of like the size of the request, or you know, like the location of the addition, those kind of
Mhm.
things.
Hmm.
Because just saying like there's a pre-existing structure, then people will keep thinking like, oh, I've got a pre-existing structure, I can just,
Mhm.
you know, that's just deemed as a practical difficulty.
Right.
Mhm.
And the reason I want to do this for sure is we now have commentary recommending denial of all of our requests, or the two where they were asked. There's two requests from the DNR suggesting we deny variances.
Mhm.
So I think we've got to get our Ts crossed and Is dotted,
Mhm.
Gonna help, I think it's a good north arrow for you guys too,
right?
thinking through wise.
Because if you read the DNR letter, it's pretty strong. And we want to be reasonable. We're working for the county and for the community to do what we can to make it the best that we can. And we just have to figure out
Mhm.
the reasoning behind it. So for number 4, I'd like to expand that a bit.
They're cool.
Practical difficulty involved is due to circumstances unique to the property. It's small. It's
They're
there.
modest requests, and it's improvements to the septic and stormwater infrastructure on the property.
Septic needed.
And it's not on the lake side. It's farthest from the lake.
Yeah,
Mhm.
did the best they could. Number 5, will approving the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Yes. All those
Yes,
cabins are little.
consistent with the other Tom Lake cabins.
Yep. And has the property owner established the practical difficulty involves more than economic considerations alone? Yes.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay, one thing, go back to Carlson. Did we need to,
Expand the,
does it need to be removed? And then how does it need to be removed?
Just
I
by
don't-
denial, it needs to
That's-
be
that's
removed.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're not,
Yeah.
got it.
with the variance denied, he can still take it to court.
Mm.
But if we approved it, we've got to have or if we denied it or approved it, we've got to have the reasoning behind it.
Mhm.
And I think we've got good reasoning. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Is everybody?
Good work.
5. That's not bad.
Pretty good. That's